Welcome back, folks. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and today we're going to be talking about the Rams backup quarterback situation. Not like a video where we break down all of the guys that are available in free agency of who they could sign, or not even just talking about all the backup quarterback options and just quarterback options in general in the draft. We're going to be talking about the three that I think are the most likely. So in a way, it's kind of a predictive thing. But I'm excited to get into it. We'll have one guy that I believe the Rams are going to sign, one guy, if they don't sign him, that I believe the Rams could trade for, even if they do sign that previous guy. And the other guy, I guess, even if that happens, they could draft. We'll also have some honorable mentions. So I am excited to get into it. Before I do, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. And also be sure to follow me on all social media at JK Bogan. Let's dive into this thing. So you had to know we're going to start off. Number one here is a signing. And I am going to say the most likely scenario here for the Rams is that they do re-sign Carson Wentz. Okay. Carson Wentz is going to cost you about a 1 to 2 year deal worth about $6 million annually in my projections. He could get more, but that's how I see it. I think the backup quarterback market is going to not blow up, but I think it's going to be a lot more lucrative than years past for those guys because of this past season. You know, watching all sorts of guys get hurt, from Kirk Cousins and Joe Burrow to even Matthew Stafford having an injury scare, all sorts of injuries all over the board. I think it's definitely going to have some wrinkles and some ripple effects in there that helps those guys get signed. So Carson Wentz, I think the pros, what are you getting from him? Well, he's NFL ready. I mean, that we know, right? He won the last regular season game for the Rams. He knows the offense, and he's mobile. Okay, that's a big deal. Wentz can come right in right away, and if he agrees to, understand he's not going to start over Matthew Stafford, he is the best quarterback option for the Rams. Right now, the Rams do not need to think about the future. They need to think about the here and now. You can add some guys here and there, but at quarterback, that would be kind of a waste. If you go out and you get a younger a younger wide receiver in the first round, for instance, that guy can contribute on day one. Okay, we've already seen Puka Nacua, 5th round pick, ends up being a starter. No one expected that. Well, some people did, but that's what ends up happening. So when you draft a quarterback, though, unlike other positions, that guy is probably not going to see the field. So if you draft him in the first, you have a first-round pick that's not on the field. Now, that's not any different than any of the years under Sean McVay, since they haven't had a first-round pick on the field since Jared Goff. But you get my point there. So Carson Wentz, the cons with him, he's the most expensive option of the three that I'm going to bring up. He's the least likely to hang on to a long-term deal. I could definitely see a world where he signs a 2-year deal with an opt-out, kind of similar to Coleman Shelton. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the NFL. And we could see him leave after the season and go become a starter somewhere. I would not rule that out. He's also the oldest. He's in his 30s, and he has an injury history, which is definitely fair to say. People know that. So with Carson Wentz, I love this move because I like the familiarity factor. He already worked with this offense. He knows the offense. I like the mobility factor. He ran more than, I think it was 15 times in that Week 18 game. So when push comes to shove and he gets thrown into the fire, that this is not the same exact offense to game plan against. If Stafford goes down, you're almost at you're at a disadvantage because Stafford's down, but you're at an advantage because now you're not even running the same offense. When you have Carson Wentz, you have to be aware of anything. I mean, he can run it, he can throw it. I mean, we saw it. So that adds that dimension to the offense. So I think that's the most realistic option, and that's number one here. Honorable mention, if they sign anybody other than Wentz, I'm going to say is Gardner Minshew, a guy that very much fits the bill there, a little bit younger. But you talk about the mobility factor. Guys played in some big games, and he's clutch. I mean, certain things maybe he could have done a little bit better and, maybe he could have had more success. But I thought this past year with the Colts, when he had to take over for Anthony Richardson, I was really impressed with the way he hung in there. The Colts are not littered with talent all around him. Okay. We didn't have Jonathan Taylor for most of the year. Zach Moss ended up stepping up, but outside of Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs had some issues staying healthy, although, solid talent there. You look at Alec Pierce, I mean, he's not exactly what I thought he was going to be coming out of Cincinnati. So it's not like they're littered with talent all over the place. And I thought Minshew did a nice job. And then, of course, you have that mobility factor with Minshew. Not necessarily that he's going to run it, as much as, say, Wentz, but he can keep plays alive that would otherwise be dead with more pocket-oriented passers. So my first guy, Carson Wentz, and my honorable mention to sign is Gardner Minshew. Now let's get into number 2 here. And number 2 is going to be a trade. And before we get to that trade, just a word from our sponsor on this video. It is Cut. The app is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's legal in 40 plus states. Cut has customizable odds, tracking capabilities, and an entire social network with group chats, user profiles, and rewards. All payments, no need for Venmo. Use our promo code BelieveRams for a 10% welcome deposit bonus. Don't forget that promo code, CUT. Put your money where your mouth is. So let's get back to it here. I mentioned a trade. Well, your mind had to go in the direction. You know where I'm going. I'm probably going to get hate in the comments for it, but I don't care. I think it's very realistic. I think it could work out well. I not only think it could work out well, but if somehow, some way, the Rams did trade for Zach Wilson and Zach Wilson really got a shot at post Matthew Stafford, they could find their franchise quarterback of the future. I'm just saying. So, trade for Zach Wilson is number 2. What would it cost? We talked about Carson Wentz would cost about $6 million a year, 1 to 2 year deal. What about Zach Wilson? Well, we're talking about right now, in the here and now. This would cost $5.4 million to take on his deal. So you would have to pay $5.4 million this year. And you would also have to give up a 6th round pick. But what would you be getting out of it? Zach Wilson, still very young, NFL ready. He's got the familiarity factor with the offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur and current offensive assistant Rob Calabrese, who just came over. He's mobile. Again, he's young, and he's a potential long-term option. And I'll be honest with you, Zach Wilson was not perfect. I covered him, with the Jets 2 years ago now, and he's not perfect. And I've watched him, okay? But there are some things that I really like where, maybe if he was with Mike LaFleur this past year and not Nathaniel Hackett, things could have been different. I'm not going to sit here and say Zach Wilson had nobody to throw to, because that's just not the case. He definitely had Garrett Wilson to throw to. At the same time, though, that offensive line, you look at the offensive line in 2022 for the Rams, 16, 17 different offensive line combinations. That's what the Jets have gone through. Okay, it hasn't been smooth sailing. Laken Tomlinson was an absolute bust of a signing. That didn't work out. Then you have McGovern. He gets hurt. You have Tippmann, who you draft. You draft Elijah Vera Tucker, who's fantastic, but then he ends up suffering a season-ending injury. And then you're going through guys like, Brown, and it's just, they're signing these older guys, right? And to me, it was just kind of a revolving door all over the offensive line, and it just didn't work out in Zach Wilson's favor. We're talking about starting a rookie 4th rounder out of Louisiana Lafayette and Max Mitchell. There were just some different, things that they went through. So looking at Zach Wilson, I mean, if he had a chance to play behind the Rams offensive line, play with Sean McVay, play with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and, DeMarcus Robinson and, whoever else they bring in, I think he could do some things. Now, do I want to see Zach Wilson playing it all this year? No, I want to see Matthew Stafford playing all 17 games. But if, God forbid, Zach Wilson had to go in there, don't be surprised if he were to come in and play better than he ever did with the Jets. I don't think the Jets were a great environment for Zach Wilson. First off, I think the New York media is hard to play with, okay? Look at Geno Smith. Geno Smith's career changed dramatically, down the road. Obviously, he ended up playing for the Giants too. Did nothing with the Giants, did nothing with the Jets, goes to Seattle, and now he's starting quarterback. Sam Darnold did not do well with the Jets. And I'm not saying he's great or anything. He's a free agent actually right now. But you saw some things in Carolina where you're like, okay, I think this guy can play. And that's the problem, is that for young quarterbacks, that New York media can eat you up, and spit you out. And Zach Wilson, that's what happened. I think there was also a lot going on. I think the owner, Woody Johnson, is way too involved. So I'm not a fan of the way he owns that team. I like that, with the Rams, Kroenke's out of it, just lets the football guys be football guys. Woody Johnson's constantly running his mouth. So I don't know. I don't see how Zach Wilson would have had any confidence playing for that organization anyway, because it was always, he had a bad game, and Woody Johnson would come out and say, we have a problem at quarterback, or whatever. So I'll say this, looking at Zach Wilson, there are definitely a lot of pros there. There's also a lot of cons. The $5.4 million, that probably has people running the opposite way. If I can get Carson Wentz back for $6 million, I know what Carson Wentz is in this offense. Why would I, pay 5.4 and a 6th round pick for Zach Wilson? I get that. He could also walk in the offseason, which is entirely a realistic thing. Now, it might not be beneficial. If he finds a home in LA, he's not Baker Mayfield. Okay. Baker Mayfield, he got a chance to start. I don't think anybody is giving Zach Wilson a chance to start after this year, regardless if he's on the Rams or not. I think he's going to have to earn it. And so I think it'd be stupid for him to leave if he finds a comfortable home there. He's got an injury history. He had the MCL issue. He's got some confidence issues. I mean, I like the guy, but you can tell. I mean, he gets rattled, and it's one of those things where I just, again, don't think it was a great environment with the Jets, but, things could get bad in LA. Who knows? It's the NFL. Is that something that's going to last, or was that just the Jets? I think that's a fair question. And he's turnover prone. I think this is somebody, obviously I thought he got better this year, but this is somebody who really wants to make every single play. He needs to learn how to, live to play another down. And I think he'll be taught that, and I think he'd be developed well with the Rams, but it's still something worth mentioning. And the last thing here is a big thing, because I am pro trading for Zach Wilson and signing Carson Wentz. But one thing that is important here with Zach Wilson is that he might not be safe enough to have as your backup quarterback. Now, what does that mean? Because he started games last year, and I think that he is a good backup. But what does that mean? Well, what it means is that for the Rams, losing Matthew Stafford, they would, if that were to happen, God forbid, they want to take a more conservative approach. Is Zach Wilson willing to adhere to that? Or is he going to play outside of the system? Is he going to do his own thing? We've seen him do that. We've seen him go off schedule, off script, things like that. Is he going to do too much of that? That's a legit question. So then my honorable mention there would be to trade for Trey Lance from the Cowboys, because I was reading that the Cowboys apparently are potentially going to trade Trey Lance. Sounds like the Vikings could be interested. So if Trey Lance is on the market, the reason why he's an honorable mention is because I think it's worth mentioning his name, but he's not on the market like a Zach Wilson. Like, the Jets will probably cut Zach Wilson if they can't find a home for him. I don't see any chance of him being back on the roster. Okay. Trey Lance, I think there's a good chance that the Cowboys keep him. But who would I have? Him or Zach Wilson? I would take Trey Lance, but I like them both. Moving on to the last portion of this video, we're talking about who would the draft pick, okay? I'm not talking about Bo Nix, who's probably going to go in the first, maybe even second, maybe second round. I'm not talking about Michael Penix Jr., who could do the same. I'm not talking about Daniels or May or Caleb Williams or J.J. McCarthy. No, I'm talking about Spencer Rattler. I think the three best backup options, most realistic, and my favorite would be Carson Wentz, signing him, trading for Zach Wilson, and drafting Spencer Rattler. The cost for Spencer Rattler, 3rd round pick. They have 2 of them. The pros, I think he's got long-term upside. Okay, this was one of the top high school recruits coming out. He goes to Oklahoma. He was always somebody who had some sort of controversial comment or was just considered kind of a jerk, based on just the things that you would hear about him. And it was just, he was really cocky and I guess that, rubbed people the wrong way. And his attitude in Oklahoma got him benched for Caleb Williams. And, the fans really turned on him and everything. But that's not how the story ends, though. Because Spencer Rattler actually ends up transferring to South Carolina. And the numbers are not great. Okay, let me just be honest. 19 touchdowns. I think it was 6 they weren't amazing, right? But I want to add some context here. Because first off, we're not just using the numbers when it comes to the draft, film and just the different things that guys go through and their mechanics and things like that. I mean, Anthony Richardson didn't have crazy numbers, let's be honest here. But Rattler, it's important to have context because he had a 68 completion percentage, 19 touchdowns. He was playing in pretty much a pro-style offense, okay? He's not playing, and another thing is it's South Carolina. Nothing against South Carolina, but they're not getting the same prospects to come over as in Oklahoma. They're not getting the same offensive line guys. They're not getting the same wide receivers. Wide receivers want to play in those offenses. They want to play in the obviously if there are more balls being thrown towards them, they want to play in that offense instead of the ones that are going to be less thrown, right? Since it was more of a pro-style offense, more multi-read offense, not just air raid, things like that, he did have Xavier Leggett, who will probably be a second-round pick this year, maybe even slide in the first. But he didn't have a boatload of wicked talented receivers. And another thing with him is that he's not just chucking it down the field where guys are wide open. He had to make some timing throws. And I look at that pro-style offense at South Carolina and playing, he was really developing himself more for the NFL game, which kind of gets me excited. And when people say, come on, Spencer Rattler, the guy's been in college forever, I get what you're saying. He's an older rookie, but he's only going to be 24 in September. It's not like he'll be 26 or 27, okay? There are plenty of quarterbacks that have come out that were that old. So he's got great arm talent, okay? He can make some wow throws. He's tough as hell, okay? I've watched this guy get decked, just absolutely staring down the barrel of a gun in the pocket and just knows he's going to take a bone-jarring hit, and he takes it. He doesn't change his footing or anything. He actually will double down and step right into that throw because he's more focused on getting the best ball out of his hand instead of trying to make sure he's okay. Now, the thing that I want to say is this. Not only would he be affordable, he'd be on a 4-year deal, and he's a 4-year starter in college in a pro-style offense. But the thing about Rattler going back to the whole he's a jerk, he turns people off, he's not that anymore from what it sounds like. He interviewed really well. He sounds like he got a dose of humble pie, and he's worked his way back from it. And look, this draft, I've said it over and over and over again with these quarterbacks. I think this is an overrated quarterback draft. I think everyone and their mother is talking about May and talking about Caleb and talking about J.J. McCarthy and Jaden Danielson. And I think Jaden Daniels might be the best quarterback in this draft. I'm very high on him, so I'm not trying to throw shade at him. I like Penix, I some bits of Bo Nix I like. But the thing here is that this feels like this draft is going to overlook one quarterback, okay? While everyone flocks to the top-heavy guys, I think Spencer Rattler is that guy. And I know some people are going to say Michael Pratt, and I kind of like Michael Pratt at Tulane, and he could be an option. But Rattler feels like the guy that's being overlooked. It's almost reverse to a Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts scenario for different reasons. Jalen Hurts transfers from Alabama after getting hurt and losing his starting job to Tua Tagovailoa, right? Jalen Hurts then goes to Oklahoma and becomes a star, but he didn't leave Alabama. There were nothing that was said that was bad when it comes to Jalen Hurts. He didn't get benched because of how he actually was very humble about that whole situation and was very, nice and supportive of Tua. But he needed to go and make his money. He needed to go and try to find a way to get into the league. And the best way to do that was to start. You're not going to do that as a backup. So he transfers to Oklahoma and has a great season. And then, of course, he goes to the NFL in the second round. And Tua goes in the top 5. Guess who's the better quarterback in the NFL? I would say Jalen Hurts. They're both good, but I would say Jalen Hurts is better. What if that same Caleb Williams, Spencer Rattler thing happens? Now, it's unlikely because you look at Caleb Williams and he's clearly more talented. And he has a higher floor and he has a higher ceiling, likely. And he does some more crazy things with his legs and such. But we've seen it before. Guys, where did this guy come from? There's no reason why Spencer Rattler can't be that coming out of this draft. 3rd round, 4th round pick. I think it'll be a 3rd. I think he's got all the tools that you look for in a passer. Now, he's mobile, but he's not fast. He ran a 4.9, did not run particularly well at the combine. Not really a big worry for me. I just think he is the guy, and he had mentioned Matthew Stafford as one of the guys he models this game after. He's one of the guys, to me, where in this draft, you're getting him in the 3rd round, so you're not overdoing it for a quarterback, but you're still staying true and you're showing that due diligence. Obviously, in a perfect world for the Rams, they don't need to do this. Stetson Bennett ended up being, the real deal, but we don't know if Stetson Bennett's going to play football again. So that's why we're in this position. So I like the idea of drafting Spencer Rattler. I like the idea of trading for Zach Wilson. I like the idea of signing Carson Wentz. Those are my top 3. My honorable mention for draft pick is Jordan Travis from FSU on day 3. Okay. Suffered a season-ending leg injury. I understand there are a lot of people that would be, taken back from that. And it's not to say he'd be necessarily the backup quarterback option for the Rams. I wouldn't be against drafting him, though. I like Rattler a lot in the 3rd round, and that would probably be my number 1 guy for the Rams. I mean, if a guy like Michael Penix Jr. or somebody like that falls in the 3rd round, then you have that argument for sure. But realistically speaking, Spencer Rattler should be there in the 3rd. And I think he makes the most sense. But I think Jordan Travis on day 3 would be a nice honorable mention. So I'm going to mention Jordan Travis here. I thought he got a lot better over the course of his college career. I think he can make some really nice NFL throws, has that mobility, can pick up first downs. The leg injury is a concern, but I think it could cause him to fall into the Rams' lap. And I mean, the Rams have drafted Florida State players before. And they've also drafted South Carolina. So I think they'll be looking at both of those guys. I don't know if Travis is 100% going to be the guy they go after. I think they're more likely to go after Rattler. Just keep an eye on Spencer Rattler, I'll say. But honorable mention, Jordan Travis. But anyway, that's going to do it. Who do you want as the Rams backup quarterback? Do you like any of these options? Do you hate them? Do you kind of like them? Do you have any of your own? Let me know in the comments section below. Personally, I think when it's all said and done, they're going to end up Carson Wentz and they might trade for Zach Wilson even still. I think they're going to get 2 of those 3 guys. Just my thoughts. If they sign Carson Wentz, I think they still probably get Zach Wilson or Spencer Rattler. If they, trade for Zach Wilson, there's still a chance they draft Spencer Rattler or Travis or whoever. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys in this video. You guys take care. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later, folks.